So I'm the Education and Programs Coordinator at the Chinese Historical Society of America, but I'm not going to be running today's program. I'm actually turning over the show to two of CHSA's interns for the summer. So I would like to introduce Anna Chang, who is a computer science major at Stanford, and also Chris Ying, who is a math and history major at Berkeley. And they're going to be running things today. So thank you everyone again for joining. If you have questions, feel free to message me. And turning it over to Chris.
All right, hello everyone. As Maggie just said, my name is Chris. I'm a rising sophomore at Berkeley. And, oh, what just happened?
Oh, I turned off the share screen.
Oh, okay, okay. So, okay. So like I was saying, I'm a rising sophomore at Berkeley, and I have the absolute honor of introducing our guest for today. So in 1996, an Asian Week publication described Maeley Tom as, quote, one of the most powerful and influential non-elected political figures in the Asian American community. That's no understatement. Maeley has dedicated her entire political career to the advancement of the Asian American community. In her 20 years in the California State Legislature, she became the first woman and ethnic minority to serve as the Chief Administrative Officer of the State Assembly, as well as Chief of Staff to the President of the State Senate. In fact, to this day, she is the only person to have ever held a chief executive position in both houses of the state legislature. She was one of the first Asian American women to serve as senior vice president of a prominent Washington lobbying firm. She was President Clinton's appointment to represent the United States at the United Nations Women World Conference Platform Committee. And in fact, just this year, Maeley joined the Committee of 100, a group of influential Asian Americans dedicated to promoting the full participation of all Chinese Americans in American society. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me give a warm welcome to Mrs. Maeley Tom.
Chris, thank you so much for that generous introduction. I'm telling you, it's also nice to have this hosted by two of the interns here at the Chinese Historical Society. I first want to thank the Chinese Historical Society for hosting this book talk for me, and I really thank you for the contributions that the society organization makes in terms of talking about the contributions and retaining the cultural and legacy of Chinese Americans and their contributions to this country. So thank you so much for hosting this on my behalf, and Maggie for all of your work to make this happen. Thank you.
No, thank you, Maeley. And speaking of which, the first question I also have the honor of asking you is about your book in particular. The question is, why did you title your book, I'm Not Who You Think I Am? Was it intended to respond to the stereotypes of Asians and women that you faced in your time in the legislature?
Actually, that's a very good question, and a lot of people have been asking that. The title is twofold. One, the title reflects what Asian women face every day when they are, especially in their professional careers, is that we always constantly have to fight to establish the fact that we are not always meek, we are not always mild, that yes, we are just as capable as leading, and we're just as competent as anyone else. So that's one stereotype that we constantly have to fight. Secondly, I chose the title because while a lot of people think of my accomplishments and they feel my career has been really a pathway to success, I kind of wanted to demyth that, because what I went through to achieve what I did, I went through a lot of struggles and challenges, and I didn't always do it perfectly. Even though I mentor a lot of people now, I try to point out that I had a lot of lessons learned, and that's why I chose the title, I Am Not Who You Think I Am. And the third factor has to do with, I had a very unusual childhood that I never really talked to people about. I kept it rather private. And so all of those factors went into the title, I Am Not Who You Think I Am.
Thank you for that. For the next question, I'll turn it over to Anna.
Yes, speaking of your early childhood, how would you say the events of your childhood impacted your life?
In fact, that's the reason why I actually wrote the book, because my unusual childhood, growing up in foster homes or growing up for 8 years under a European culture type of environment, and being on my own at a very early age really helped me navigate my adulthood, because I had to learn to be self-reliant. I also was raised in a culture, it was a French Basque culture. My foster mother was French Basque. And I grew up learning that it was okay to be emotional. It was okay to show self-esteem. If you're smart, it's okay to talk about it. And it was very loving and an open type of environment. And I also felt that through my youth, where I was on my own since the time I was pretty much 14 to 16, it gave me a sense of independence. It gave me a sense of confidence that helped me navigate through my career. And I felt that if I didn't intertwine my past history, people wouldn't quite understand why, in some ways, I was different from the typical Asian American woman. And I wanted to weave that into why I had some different traits. I had some traits that really helped me succeed in politics, because I wasn't quite hindered by some of the cultural barriers that Asians have to face in competing in a Western society. So my childhood played a real role in how I moved up the ladder in politics. So that's the reason why I feel that my childhood and youth really were important factors to include in the book.
Thank you.
All right, looks like I also have the next question. So based off of what you just told us, and that your childhood basically served as like kind of a foundation for your political career, what would you say is the most important lesson that you learned in your political career?
That's a very good question, Chris. I think the fact that I faced challenges so early in my youth, that's discussed in the book, from the age to 14 on, I had to really develop some sense of confidence in myself. I had to really struggle to make myself, define myself, so that I had some normalcy in my life as I was growing up. And I found that that played a role as I went through politics, because I'll tell you, politics is a personal, competitive contact sport. Don't let anybody tell you different. It's a tough environment to survive. You need a thick skin. You need to deal with strong personalities, huge egos, and you need to learn to stand on your own. And that's again where my childhood came on, help me, because I learned to have to stand on my own at a very early age. Politics also is the survival of the fittest mentality. You need to be tenacious. You need to be resilient, especially if you're a minority, and especially if you're a woman. I feel that communication skills were extremely important in politics, to be able to articulate and to be able to express yourself clearly and concisely. I also felt that in my early life, to prepare to go to college on my own, to prepare how to support myself through school and determine kind of my own destiny, that I had to do a lot of homework to make sure that I made the right decisions and that I weighed all the options in terms of what did I want to do when I was 16. I graduated from college and here I was on my own. So I developed that ability to really do my homework. What school I was going to be able to go to, how was I going to support myself. In politics, it's the same. To succeed in politics, you have to do your homework because you're going to be challenged all the time. You have to know all the elements that surround you in politics, and you have to know as much as about the personalities that you're going to deal with in politics in order to succeed. Because in politics, it's very unpredictable, as you can see what's happening in everyday politics today. So those, I feel, are the toughest lessons that I learned in working in politics for the past 40 years.
And do you still apply those lessons today?
Absolutely. Lifelong lessons.
Well, I think Anna has a question for you about those tough experiences that you had.
Yeah, speaking of which, throughout your book, you highlight the struggles of your political career, such as being a woman in a field dominated by men, being told to support your husband's business, and being an Asian woman in a white-dominated world, often seen as like a foreigner. In the light of all these challenges, why did you decide to stay in politics?
That's a very good question, because there were times when I felt, is it all worth it? Especially when you are in an executive position and you see people wanting to see you fail in some way because they're not used to seeing a minority woman in a position of authority. And I would take it personally. It was painful, to realize, because I wanted to be liked by everyone, which was one of my weaknesses. In growing up without a family, the only way you get self-value is by people making you feel good about yourself. So one of the toughest lessons I had to learn in politics is that the higher you go up in politics, the more detractors you are going to have. And the toughest battle I had to deal with is that not everyone was going to like me. And I wanted everyone to like me because it made me feel worthy. So that was one of the toughest lessons I had to learn in politics. Why did I stay in politics for, gosh, it's 40, I think, now I'm going to really give my age, it's between like 45 years. And I try to tell everybody when I started in politics, I was 2 years old, so that my age goes down a little bit. But in getting over the calculation of my age, I will say that I really stayed in politics because I firmly believe in this saying that I like, and it says, the greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you cannot do. And because politics is such a challenging environment, that I always wanted to prove that Asian Americans have their place in politics. They can excel in politics and they can be leaders in politics because we are as capable as everyone else. So that definitely was a motivation for why I wanted to stay in politics. And also it was a career that not only allowed me to try to make a difference and try to have some impact on the everyday lives of people. That's what politics does. It also helped me serve other people. It helped me serve my community. And at the same time, I was in a position where I had access and influence in politics that really helped me to use that access and influence to empower my own community. That to me brought the greatest joy, that I had the lucky fortune to be in politics with people of influence can really help my own community gain that semblance of empowerment and having a voice. But I think really being in a position to make a difference, really the rewards were so much more rewarding and compensated for the challenges that I faced in politics.
Thank you. So another question is, was it ever difficult, or did you ever struggle with writing so openly about your personal life and those hardships?
Actually, being that it took me about 25 to 30 years, I have friends, and I know they're listening in, who I have I've been with during college, and they know how long this journey has for me to write this book. But the reason why I decided to write the book is that I was targeted during one of the biggest Asian finance, well, it was the biggest finance scandal during the Clinton administration, that where I was targeted, and it was totally devastating to my life. I felt, here, I mean, I'm being accused of possibly being involved with a conspiracy to bring in China's influence through fundraising, while all the time, the reason why I was involved was because I was the only Asian American on the Democratic National Committee. And at that time, during the President Clinton's administration, he would want me to be at all the Asian fundraisers because I was one of the most influential Chinese in democratic politics. So I was everywhere. So as a result, fast forward, when the scandal rose, I was being targeted because I was everywhere. I was so devastated by being on the front page of Wall Street Journal, USA Today, being accused of all of these things that I felt that I wanted to fight back. But during a scandal, generally the political pundits will say, do not say anything public. I said, I'm being accused of things, but I can't defend myself. They say, don't say anything because it's public record. And so I felt handicapped. And the only, I think, motivation that helped me survive this devastating episode in my life was my attorney said to me, Maeley, one day you should write about this, how the Asian American community was targeted and were used as scapegoats for doing something that other foreign countries have been doing and yet untouched by their illegal contributions from European countries to other countries. But they picked on Asians to target for funneling illegal money into campaigns. So that was my first interest in saying, okay, I'm going to write a book and then I can kind of get even a little bit. But then when I realized that I never shared my personal life, when I realized that I had such amazing opportunities to interact with a lot of household names, personalities in elected office, and the history of how during the 70s to the 90s, Asian Americans really had to fight. They really had to struggle to be taken seriously by mainstream society and politics. So I said, why not share all of that in the book? So I did that. And I think the personal part and the scandal part was probably the toughest chapters for me to write because I had to relive the memories that sometimes you just rather not deal with. But I felt I wanted the story to be whole. And most important, I wanted the book to understand that on my ladder and on my journey for my accomplishments, I had weaknesses, I had strengths, I had flaws, and I had, major achievements. I wanted to share all that so I could leave some of those lessons for your generation, Chris and Anna, to understand that the road to success is not always an easy road. And by sharing my experiences, I hoped it probably would inspire others to follow that path to success, understanding it's not an easy road.
Well, I think I speak for everyone when we appreciate your candor in your work, and I think that adds a lot to the work as a whole. I want to build off of something that you said towards the end there. You kind of want to leave this message for the next generation, right? And you kind of throughout your career, throughout the end of your career, you've been a mentor to a lot of politicians, current day authorities, everything like that. But of course, when you were starting out, I imagine that you also had some mentors as well, right? Can you talk about the importance of mentorship to your own growth? And what should young professionals look for if they're looking for a mentor? Well,
in my case, mentors helped me through my youth and through my career because, and actually as I was growing up, quite frankly, only because I didn't have a family or a family network to give me support or to mentor me or to teach me or to give me a sense of value in terms of what's right and what's wrong. I cultivated that through mentors and often through my peers. I have a friend who's listening to this book, to this book talk, Maeley Tom, who, I would follow. She was my peer in college, but I learned to do what she did because she grew up with parents. And I tried to frame my life to follow a lot of friends who had strong family background so that I would have the same values. But mentors in my career were everything to me, starting from day one. And it's it takes, for example, I would have to say in the legislature, I really didn't have too many Asian mentors because there were not very many Asians in politics. One person who became an icon to me and who I would call often if I had an issue is Congressman Norman Mineta, who was an icon when I was in politics, but he wasn't in the Capitol. He was already in Congress. But for the other mentors, they were not Asians. The mentors were one, a Latino, the former Senator Art Torres. And then I had the pleasure of working with then Assemblywoman Maxine Waters, who's now a Congresswoman. I had also my bosses, Assembly Rules Chairman, the late Assembly Rules Chairman, Louis Papin. And I had the late Senator, who was an icon during his days, Senator John Vasconcellos. And then I had professional peers like Dave Townsend and others who saw how rare it was to have an Asian woman in the Capitol and literally took me under their wings to help me succeed. But the most important influence in my career in the Capitol was another Asian woman by the name of Georgette Imura. And she was a legislative assistant just like me. And at that time, there was only about 5 or 6 of us in the Capitol who were professional. And she and I became like 2 peas in a pod. And together, we worked together to empower Americans in politics. I did not do it on my own. I did it because I had a partner in this amazing woman, Georgette Imura, who was in the Capitol longer than I was. But I want to say that, as I moved up the ladder and as I started to mentor people, you can't imagine how much a moment of your time for someone who comes up to you and wants your advice or counsel can change a person's life, can help navigate them, or can give them some self-confidence. So I was always, because of how I benefited from mentorship, I was a firm believer that it was equally my role to pay it forward. And whether it's a minute, I've had people who I've mentored for years and I'm still mentoring these days. I have elected officials who are in Congress, who are in state office, who still call me every once in a while and say, what do you think about this? I think that the value of mentorship can make so much difference in a person's life because it made a lot of difference in my life. And that's why I'm continuously preaching mentor, share, because as you grow in success, you need to help others grow behind you. So that's my philosophy in mentorship.
And I imagine that you applied that philosophy to politics in general, right?
Absolutely.
I have a bit of a follow-up question for you. Given that you've gone through this process of becoming successful, this very arduous process for you in becoming successful in politics because of your Asian American identity, what advice would you give young Asian Americans, maybe like me, as they begin their journeys into professional careers?
I would say, first of all, do not allow anyone to pigeonhole you as just an Asian American. Do not, I really, when I joined the legislature and people, would try to pigeonhole me into this and that, I really tried to find ways just to define myself as a person, as an individual. And as an individual, by the way, who's very proud to be Asian American. So you don't have to give up your identity as an Asian American, but you also don't want to be pigeonholed in a stereotype role as an Asian American. I have to tell you that the reason why I enjoy being on this particular book talk is because I so cherish and I'm so proud to be a Chinese American, because I think our cultures, our accomplishments, and our skills speak so well for our community and what we can contribute to this society. I feel that what really pains me in terms of Asian Americans is that to this day, there's still a continued lack of recognition and cultural barriers that prevents Asian Americans from being seen as capable to be among the top leaders in this country. And I also feel that, as you know, we continue to face discrimination, being seen as foreigners and not Americans. And we're suffering from that, from what's happening with the hate crimes that we are being victimized for because of COVID-19. So I guess my answer is kind of multitude. Be proud of your heritage, because I really am. I mean, I am so proud to be Chinese American. And yet, I don't want people just to see me as a Chinese American. I want people to see me as a contributor to society, as a whole person, as a person who can lead, as a person who's just as competent as anybody else in mainstream society. And I want to continue this fight so that our Asian Americans can be seen as equals. I hope it happens during my lifetime, but it's a fight and it's a campaign that your generation, Chris and Anna, have to continue to really fight for.
Absolutely. We'll carry on the good fight. I think Anna has a follow-up question for you on that point, actually.
So you talked, or you touched on this throughout the talk, but could you speak a little more on maybe how your identity as a Chinese and Asian American has impacted your work?
I guess the most rewarding impact it's had on my work is that I've been able to use my professional position and success in politics to empower my own community, where I was able to work with influential decision makers and make them see that Asian Americans count in this country, and how we count in this country, and how we contribute to this country, and why we need the same attention that's given to other ethnic communities. The fact that I've been able to use the position I was in to give back to my community, I think has been the most gratifying rewards that I've had being in politics. So even though, I feel that I excelled in my role, not just as an Asian American, but as a professional woman who is capable of leading and capable of performing a responsibility that provided leadership in the institution of the California legislature. The ability to use that to help my own community to seek roles in politics, to become much more engaged in asserting themselves for civil rights and for resources to benefit our community. It was the most gratifying, I think, gratifying feeling that I had as an Asian woman in this position.
I have a question for you based off of, you said you're strongly advocating that my generation carry on the fight for making sure that Asian Americans are treated equally in American society. I guess building off of that question is, given a lot of the racial tension in the United States right now, what advice can you give not only my generation but our community as a whole on how to show and advocate for cross-ethnic solidarity?
I think that our community is facing that today more than ever. And I found that in order for me to survive in the Capitol, in the legislature, because I had to work with a very diverse membership of legislators, right? There's the Black Caucus, Latino Caucus, the Gay Caucus, the Women Caucus. It was so diverse that I had to find a way to communicate and connect with all those different diverse groups, and not to even mention between the Democrats and Republicans, to make sure that I established myself so that these different groups would trust me when I had to engage with them. And how I did that was I made sure, for example, when there were political events at the Capitol, let's say with the Black Caucus or Latino caucus, I was sure I was there. I was sure that I made sure that I was able to interact with the different community groups so that they could see me as wanting to understand what their issues are. I think sometimes and I don't think this is, well, maybe it is slightly a weakness, but sometimes Asian groups tend to feel comfortable just staying within their own groups. And they don't get out of their comfort zone to also get themselves involved with other ethnic groups, to go to their activities, to become friends, to develop friendships, to have organizations interact with cross-cultural organizations. And I'll give you an example why this integration of different social and ethnic cultures are so important now. When Asians were being victimized by the COVID-19 bullying tactics, and they were harassed. I think there's over 1,000 now because I worked on helping get the hate center, data center established so that we could keep count of how Asians are being bullied and being attacked and assaulted over the COVID-19 issue. The organizations that came to our defense and the organizations who lobbied Congress to help us, NAACP, the Jewish community, Latino community, they all, for example, are now supporting Congresswoman Grace Meng's resolution that says the violence against Asians, needs to be addressed by the Department of Justice. So they came to our defense. And so it's just as important, and I see it, and I have to tell all of you, one of the most gratifying scenes for me to see is Asian Americans marching with the Black Lives Matters. This is what I call how we engage ourselves into a cross-cultural type of communities. I'm so proud, and Chris and Anna, it's a lot to do with your generation that really helps fight for other cultural and other ethnic battles. And if we don't do this more, we're never going to gain the strength of proving that people of color in this society, we belong here, we have rights, and we need to protect it just like everyone else. So when I was in the Capitol, I made sure that I integrated myself with all these factions. And as you can see, my mentors themselves are very diverse. One of my strongest allies in the Capitol was the Black Women's Legislators Caucus. They were just my strongest allies because they wanted to see me as an Asian woman succeed. So I think that your generation, Chris and Anna, are really on the right path. You're getting out of the comfort zone. You're integrating. You're helping to fight for other ethnic causes. I think we're in good hands.
Thank you. So I think this is the last question before we go to audience Q&A. So if anyone has questions, please leave them in the chat. But what would you say is the biggest takeaway you want readers to get from your personal story?
I think, no matter how you start out, I didn't start out with a whole lot. And it was a struggling youth and childhood. It really doesn't matter how you start out. It matters how you end up. And I am so blessed and so fortunate to now live a real fulfilling life where I could sit here and talk to all of you and share my lessons learned and share my experience. And it's hopefully to inspire people who don't always have that perfect beginning in life, but they don't let it deter them. They know, their future is in their hands. I think that I also never thought of myself as being the smartest kid on the block. I just never did. But I have to tell you, I was never shy about admitting what I didn't know. And I was definitely never shy about asking people what I don't know. I think there's a real importance of people and social skills that I drum into people that, you know, you could be the straight A student, you could be the 4.6 or 7 graduate from Harvard, graduate from Stanford. But if you don't have people skills and you don't have communication skills, you're not going to succeed unless you're going to just, you know, kind of be an engineer and develop, you know, a wonderful technology that's going to make you a billionaire. That's a different story. But generally speaking, I would say that it's really important to have good social skills and good people skills. And I guess lastly, I feel that I hope the book leaves with people that it's very, very important to believe in yourself. And it's very important to take risks, to speak out. And because if you don't speak out for yourself, if you don't believe in yourself, and if you don't showcase your talents, who else is going to do it for you? We can't depend on others. You have to do it yourself.
All right, that is the end of our regular question part. Now we're going to open it up to audience Q&A. Maggie, do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris and Anna, for hosting the first part of the event and asking the questions. And thank you, Maeley, for all your thoughtful answers. We really appreciate your comments, and it's very, I like how you point out that it is, Anna and Chris's generations are making a big impact. And so I'm glad that, they were here to help out today and, continue on the work that so many others have done. Right now, we're going to turn it over to the Q&A. So asking the first question is going to be Karen, and then we have a question from Lillian, and then Emily. So you guys will be the first 3 to ask your question. So if you guys could turn on or if Karen, I'm going to have you turn on your microphone and your camera, please.
Thank you very much. Maeley, I really enjoy reading your book. It's very heartwarming, not only growing up, but also what you do, for the government and everything. My quick question is, if you were asked to be the next vice president for the U.S., would you accept it? And if yes, what would your plans be to accomplish?
Wow, I would think that Kamala and Tammy Duckworth and others would probably be more qualified to answer that question. I think, bottom line, the vice president who supports Biden is going to definitely have to represent the younger generation, because people will automatically see. And so I'm not that younger generation. I'm kind of a grandma. But for Biden, I'm going to answer for Biden. I want him to really select someone who represents a generation that's going to be carrying on his legacy, and a woman who doesn't just see her role as representing women or her ethnicity, but sees her role as being able to lead this country and to represent the values that are closest to the Biden's administration, and to have the energy, and I hope to have the ability to bring together this country along with Biden and to reframe this country of what it was once before. So Biden will need someone that he can trust to carry on those duties, very much like how Biden carried it for Obama. And I think whoever he chooses should have those capabilities to gain the trust of the American people right away.
Thank you.
And next is Lillian.
Hi, Maeley.
Hi, Lillian.
How are you?
Lillian used to be one of my YMCA. I was her youth counselor.
You were one of my mentors, one of my definite mentors. Yeah. My question to you is, do you feel you've influenced, your influence is more in terms of what you did in your career versus running for political office yourself?
In other words, would I have been more influential if I ran for public office?
Yes, I guess.
Probably in the big picture, I think, because I would have been the actual decision maker in making policies instead of working behind the scenes like I have in terms of influencing the decision makers. I would actually be the decision makers. But one of my weaknesses that I point out in the book when I was asked to run for office was that I was too scared. I was held back by the Asian culture that I didn't want to take the risk of running for office where there's a 50-50 chance of losing. I didn't have the courage that our current crop of legislators have, that I so admire, that they're willing to run for office, they're willing to lose, they're willing to risk losing face. I just said, if I lose, I don't know if I can handle that loss of face. That was my weakness because I didn't have the courage. So that's why I totally respect and would help any Asian elected officials who take that risk to run for office. Because I tell you, in our society, in our Asian culture, losing face is still huge. And it keeps a lot of talented people from running for office. And I was held back by that fear. So while I think possibly I could have done more if I was an elected official, I tried to compensate that now by, because I'm too old to run, to encourage a lot of the young people who now have the bravado and the confidence to run. And whether they lose or not, they know they have to run to showcase Asians are talented and they can help make this country better. So Lillian, you pointed out one of my weaknesses there.
I didn't mean to do that. That wasn't my point. You can run now. I'd vote for you. Let's see. I enjoyed your book very much too.
Thank you, Lillian.
Okay, asking the next question is going to be Emily.
She's trying to figure it out, I think.
There we go.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, Maeley. My question to you is much more towards your childhood, perhaps, because those early years are the years that I've known you the most. And so the question is, let me see, where did I write it?
Just go for it, Emily.
Yeah, it was up here a moment ago. Okay, so this is, I could write it. Okay. How has there been many comments from all the people that you have written about and those people in your early years? You know, has people come up to you or sent messages to you to, you know, confirm things that you said, or how the reaction has been?
Well, let's have truth and disclosure right now. Yeah. Emily is actually one of my college friends who really was like a mentor to me too when I was in San Francisco. She was this sophisticated San Francisco, you know, college girl. I was this country bumpkin, you know, from Oakland, not really knowing, you know, the whys, how to get around San Francisco. So this truth and disclosure, she's one of my best friends in college. But yes, I've had a lot of amazing comments from people who I featured in the book. The only one I haven't heard from yet is Willie Brown. And I was very candid with my relationship with Willie Brown, who I'm sure many of you know, who was an amazing boss. And I have to tell you, I wouldn't be where I am today if he wasn't so tough on me. But as I grew out of working for Willie, you know, we've had some of our differences because I felt I was an adult and I was my own person. And it's hard for this amazing, brilliant man to realize once you work, he feels once you work for him, you always work for him. But anyway, that didn't happen. But I think he's the only one who hasn't really made a comment about how I portrayed him in the book, which I think was actually pretty fair. But all the other people have been very, very comfortable, because I don't know if those of you who have the book understand that the two major accomplishments I feel I made during my career was putting together two Asian Democratic conferences, that one forced governors of California to address Asian issues for the first time in history. And the second national conference actually was the first time that presidential candidates addressed Asian issues for the first time in public. So what I wanted to do, and maybe this is what Emily's alluding to, everybody who helped with that effort, I wanted to be recognized. So in the back of my book, because it took a village, I recognized hundreds of people who participated. So they're all excited. And it's also a good bookseller ploy.
Yeah.
They're all buying the books.
Good for sales. Wonderful.
Yes, Emily.
Well, I'm just as proud as Peach with all your accomplishments. So I've told Maeley this, that I'm her best cheerleader. So if she ever needs anyone out there to rally for her, I will be there.
Thanks, Emily.
Love you.
Love you too.
Just a comment that's been made in the general chat, Maeley, from Jadine, is she says that you're a tremendous leader and role model. Many of us in the Asian American political arena are very proud to stand on your shoulders. So just a big thank you from her.
Well, that comes from another role model too, Jadine. So thank you, Jadine, coming from you. Such a trailblazer.
So everyone, our next two questions that we have lined up, one is from Angelo and the next is from Marcia.
Hi, Maeley. Thank you again so much for speaking to our community. So I did have one question. The staff and the interns have been sharing some questions. One that I feel is personal to me. I identify as an immigrant, having moved to America about 4 years ago, which was rather timely. It was just the time when Trump got elected as president. You've overcome a lot as an Asian American woman throughout your career. So I was wondering what advice you could give young Asian Americans like myself who feel discouraged in the current state of the United States, especially in a time when there's a lot of racial profiling and a lot of ongoing xenophobia and anti-Asian American Asian sentiments during this COVID-19 pandemic.
First of all, I would say everyone can make a difference. You're feeling this, and so are a lot of other people. But, you know, you can make a difference. Even though you're one person, you can join an organization, you can meet with other fellow colleagues who feel the same way and form some type of an action committee to address this. I know it's discouraging, but if we all don't take the time to address it and just feel hopeless, then they win and we lose. So just you're asking the question of how, you know, you can do better. Find your passion. One thing that people know about me, and I think it really helps me move people, is I'm really passionate. That comes from my French background. My French background, they're very emotional and they're very passionate. And you could tell when I'm focused on the cause and just like hearing your voice, hearing the despair, I want you to know you could do something about it. You really can. And you need to believe in yourself that you can do something about it.
Thank you, Maeley. Yes, no, absolutely. I hope that I can, being part of American society, I hope I could somehow contribute to moving the country forward in any small way I can.
And yeah, and I would do it by not just working with Asians alone. You go and work with the African Americans of their movement. You go and learn what's happening with the Latino movement. You go and learn what's happening with all the different groups, you know, that make up our society. So if Asians do not interact with all the other groups, they don't see us as a part of them. You actually have to be there with them. You have to be at their events. They want to see Asians everywhere. And sometimes we tend to just stay with our own. We really need to spread out more. and interact with other cultures.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you, Maeley. Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Marcia.
Hi.
Hi, Marcia.
Hello. Hi, Maeley. Somehow the video doesn't allow me to show my face.
But you look gorgeous. Your picture looks gorgeous.
Thank you. So, Maeley, I know you a long time in the community, and you are always so cool. So, even under stressful situations, so I want to learn something about that. And together with that, another, I think we as Asian API women leaders, we don't get credits for what we contribute. How do you address? I'd like to hear what you say about that.
Let me take your second question first. I think sometimes Asian women allow themselves not to be given credit because we're afraid to give credit to ourselves. And we're kind of under this guise that if we do a great job and you know, we made something good happen, or we made this contribution, and women tend to feel, you know, I hope they can see how hard I worked on getting this done, or you know, I want to make sure that I do the best job here. And you kind of wait to be recognized. And where you notice men don't wait to be recognized, men are first to tell their bosses, or men are first to showcase, by the way, did you see what I did? Or everybody, I was able to accomplish this and everything else. That's not women don't feel that's their place to do that. They feel that they want people to recognize them because they don't recognize themselves. Or men, it's easier to recognize themselves because it's expected. So Marcia, I think, you know, it's developing that ability to recognize yourself and get this kind of in a humble way. It's kind of tricky. It's something I had to learn in the Capitol, because I hope I have enough time. The quick story that I give about being promoted to the Chief Administrative Officer job in the Assembly was that I was bypassed 3 times, and I was there for 7 years. And they made me Chief Deputy, and I trained 3 white males to become my bosses because I was waiting for my turn to be recognized. And what happened was that when I finally couldn't do it anymore, I went to the Speaker, Willie Brown, and I said to him, you know, he says, what's your problem? And I said, the problem is that you have me train 3 white males to be my boss, and yet you've never even considered me to take the top position, and I think I deserve it. And his answer to me was, what took you so long? So I think this goes to your point, Marcia, about what women have to do. You know, we have to do it ourselves.
I got it. Thank you. And why are you always so cool?
You know, I'll tell you real quickly. When you're sometimes in hard places where people want to see you fail, or they're saying things about you, you have to really keep that professional demeanor. And what Congresswoman Maxine Waters told me once when I was very upset, she said, Maeley, if you show them that you're being upset or that something's bothering you, she says, they got you. They got you. You got to always keep your demeanor and poise.
Wow. Great advice. Thank you, Maeley. I see you soon.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions left. I have a quick one that was from Helen, and she wants to know if your book is going to be an audiobook at any point in time.
Gee, I'm not too sure. I'm so new at this, but we may look into it. Yeah, we may look
okay.
into it.
And maybe we can help you out with that part as well.
Thank
so yeah,
you, Maggie.
Yeah. And then the last question comes from Susan.
Hi, Maeley. Let me see. Actually, I'm not camera ready.
That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll skip
No
that.
problem.
But thank you for this opportunity, and it's an honor to be able to listen to your story and all that. So a little background, I just retired from the Navy last year, and I've had a lot of time to reflect back and process a lot of my experiences. So a lot of what I faced in my time was constantly being underestimated. Being Asian female, the sexism, the ageism, racism, the stereotypes, model minority myth, and all that kind of stuff. And especially as an Asian female, you're expected to be timid, you're expected to be quiet and just compliant and just go along with the flow, right? Not to be, assertive, not to be outspoken, have your own opinion, be very opinionated about it. Did you face similar issues during your career? And how were you able to reconcile like who you are as a person? Because that's what you want to be recognized as, right? Not just as like on the surface, okay, they could, obviously you're an Asian female, but there's a lot more to you as a person than that, right? I mean, you're a human being at the end of the day. You're your own individual person. So how are you able to reconcile that with people who were or weren't able to just, respect you as an individual, and they just want to keep you in that box of like, oh, well, she's just another Asian female and this is what we're going to expect from her. Or maybe she's just the secretary or the note taker in the room, but you're the one that's sitting at the table with everybody else as well. So thank you for listening.
Susan, I did have to face that. And in my case, I did have supportive bosses, but the Assembly Rules Chair who I reported to told me my greatest skill was my resilience, because he says, every time they knock you down, Maeley, you have the capacity to come back and just continue. What I found that understanding that there were people who try to pigeonhole you and treat you that way, what I did was I consistently, without showing that how they were treating me was affecting me, which answers Marcia's question, you just develop a track record of consistency, you develop a track record of competency, you develop a track record of delivering, and pretty soon your reputation of being able to deliver, being able to do the job in spite of all the backlash and people wanting to see you fail or pigeonhole you, generally starts speaking to your level of competence and leadership. But it's constantly picking up after someone tries to throw you under the bus, is the resiliency, and to keep on demonstrating that you can, that you can do the job. And that's it. It took me, I've been in Capitol for 20 years, so it really took me years to develop that reputation, and once you develop a track record and reputation, pretty soon people can't attack you, because you have now a record of accomplishments that really is in contrast to how they're trying to pigeonhole you. So I just constantly had to work on it. I constantly had to pick myself up. So I think resilience and continuing to fight to define yourself, to define your skills. Now, you said you were in the service, so I have to tell you, your challenge was possibly worse than mine, because you had an institutional challenge. The institution is so tough in the military, I know. So we're with the legislature, they're much more progressive, and there's much more of a diversity of leadership in the legislature. Wow.
Thank you, Susan. And again, thank you, Maeley, for taking your time to be with CHSA today. We really appreciate you and all your work that you've done. I've been reading your book. I still haven't had a chance to finish it, but like what I've read so far, I think I told you this before, is every time I read a little bit, I have to stop and tell my mom, like, wow, I just can't believe like this is, what you have gone through, and then your experiences. And so, that's something that it's inspiring to me. And I think it's inspiring to everyone who joined today. So again, thank you so much. And
Maggie,
thank you.
Maggie, I want to thank you and your whole team. You made it so easy, and it was, I just feel so happy that I'm able to contribute to the Chinese Historical Society, and I thank all my wonderful friends who took time to share this time with me. I love all of you, and thank you, and I am who I am because of all of you, so thank you so much.